Well, good evening and welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition Show. I'm Slim Overton, and of course, Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition Show featuring Leah Drake Stitt. And you know the new format. Leah features is featured on the evening show, and the Colonel is featured on the morning show. But anyway, I'm Slim Overton, and Leah might be a little late, but she's coming in here, and we have a special guest, and she's special anyway, but she's special also because she's been on our show several times, and she's never turned us down unless she's out of state or something comes up with the family, which is more important than anything. So, but Dr. Colita Fairfax is here with us today. Of course, if you don't know, she's professor at Norfolk State University, the Norfolk State University, Evelyn Strong School of Social Work. And we're glad to have her here. And she's going to give a presentation on Project 2025. And if you think you know about it, wait until you hear her presentation. And it's going to be very informative and very detailed about the things in there that affects us. How about that? But anyway, before she does her presentation, before we go there, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment, and share, as well as if you're watching on our Facebook pages, share your page with someone else so they can get this information and also like us. And before I do that too, welcome Dr. Fairfax to the YouTube world. I see you have a channel now that you can
Yes, sir.
spread that information. I know one of your things is college should educate not only the students, but they should educate the communities.
That's right.
And most of those HBCUs, you know where they are.
Yes, I do.
So we appreciate that and good luck with your channel. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, before you do your presentation, Colonel, do you have any comments you'd like to give before the doctor gives her presentation?
Well, yes, I'll just make this short and sweet. First, thank you, Dr. Fairfax, for coming on and spreading this bit of knowledge. We are living in some perilous times where this 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 experiment in democracy may not survive on one election. People, and I know you're going to talk about Project 2025, but there's an undertow of things that are going on that are sub or pre 2025, and actions and laws are being passed across this country in setting up for what's going to happen when if they get the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and they'll be able to just do with America anything that they want to do. One of the things I just want to point out first is we all know that several months ago, this unjust Supreme Court, highly political, struck down most of the affirmative action issues or rights in America. And one of the byproducts is that just recently there was a black venture capitalist fund that was funding black women in new startups because of the actions of the Trump and the MAGA led Supreme Court. They had to shut it down because they said it was reverse discrimination. And so recently after that, just last week, Lowe's had to shut down their diversity program. And this is happening, spreading across the entire spectrum, across all 50 states and the territories, because the corporate America is running scared because they don't want to end up in a lawsuit, and they're fearing if Trump and the MAGA people get back in office. And so I just needed to put that out as a food for thought. And having graduated from an HBCU school right across the water, Norfolk State and Hampton, who we play each other this week. And I know you'll talk about that in your presentation, but could you highlight where they want to take away HBCU funding
Mm. Yeah, so
from their program? So I'm going to turn it on you.
yes, Colonel, and it's always a pleasure to be with you all and to be with Portsmouth Coffee Talks, because I think our discussions are community love discussions coming together to talk about the interests, concerns, the beauty, the culture of our people. And so I thank you again for providing me with an opportunity to serve to serve our people. Colonel, your introductory remarks are so appropriate to our discussion about Project 25, because although we see a former president who wishes to become president again, and also a whole machine behind him who wishes that he become president again, we should not minimize nor ignore the machine that is behind Donald Trump. So yes, Donald Trump are all of the kinds of things that are problematic morally, ethically, legally, spiritually, culturally, philosophically, ideologically. All of those things are problematic about Donald Trump. But let us not lose sight that he is supported and backed not only by millions of people who invest in, believe in, and believe that white supremacy should be the foundational ideological springboard to how American society should work. There are also international leaders who believe that once America can be under a certain domain, then lies the spoils for these international leaders, both political and corporate, to be able to take advantage of America, because America absolutely is the number one superpower in the world. And so we see this ascension of anti-Blackness and of white supremacy really be unleashed actually when President Barack Obama ascends to the White House, because now you have to deal with Black people in ultimate political and economic positions. And so unlike segregation, where one could be racist and that was the accepted order of the day, we went through a period, right, of racism that morphed into a more stealth undercurrent, perhaps a very, very small period of time when certain things were not tolerated or accepted. But when you have President Obama ascend to the White House, right, that changed then the dynamic, because there are persons, companies, systems, people in power, people in controlling interests who simply are not ever going to accept Black people having equal authority and or power, equal access to controlling resources, and be able to impart policy in a way that really reflects what a quote unquote, multi-racial country is supposed to be about. So what does this mean then for Black people? I'm all about Black people. I mean, that's where I am. And this really means we've got to think very honestly and differently about certain policy documents and policy mandates, certain policy statements that are in President Trump's orbit. And so Project 2025 is an example. It is a policy mandate developed by the Heritage Foundation. And the Heritage Foundation is a very wealthy, influential, conservative think tank. And they've done this before. When Ronald Reagan became president, they created a mandate for leadership. in 1981, which President Reagan used. So this notion that if Trump becomes president again, that he is not going to use this document is folly. There's no reason why we should assume that he would not. And in fact, it is so dangerous. I shared with my students that James Clyburn, who is the congressman from South Carolina, HBCU trained, South Carolina State University. He was the majority whip and first Black majority whip. And he said that Project 2025 is Jim Crow 2.0. Mm-hmm. Well, we ought to listen to the elders, shouldn't we? We ought to listen to them. And he explained, I remember in listening to him talk about Project 2025, and I wrote down this for our discussion. It's a structural change document, which means that it is intent to change institutions and the way in which institutions function, the way in which systems function. It mandates reshaping how government functions and how the marketplace functions, how the socioeconomic political system functions. It supports authoritarianism. So we have a president, we don't have a king, but guess what? Under Project 2025, we'll have a king. And it also seeks to minimize freedoms gained in movements. So this is not a document, right, that people should assume is just, a little itty bitty document. It's a 922-page manifesto. And here's the thing. You don't write that in a day. This is a planned, coordinated, financed document with hundreds of organizations involved, hundreds of organizations, and with authors who spent months and months working on the chapters. So this is a playbook that is intent and meant to be used. And we all play sports, right? We all play sports. Your coach puts together a playbook to do what? To win. To win. And so they intend to use it. Should I keep going?
Keep going.
Yes.
So listen. So again, as I shared with my students at NSU, this playbook is meant to impact every field of study. I told my students from the School of Business to the natural sciences, to those in education, to those of us who are in the cultural and behavioral sciences, those who are in history and humanities, regardless of what your profession is, those who are military folks, regardless of what discipline, profession you choose, you will be impacted by this document if it is enforced. Most of the authors of the chapters in Project 2025 worked in Donald Trump's previous presidential candidate. So this whole notion that, I'm not connected to them does not make sense. And we simply should not accept it. And then here's the thing. People know how dangerous it is. And I shared with my students, Don Scott, first Black Speaker of the House, sent Governor Youngkin a letter when he learned that Lindsey Burke had been assigned to the Board of Visitors at George Mason University. Lindsey Burke wrote the chapter on education. The chapter on education where it is articulated that the Department of Education should probably be eliminated. And so Don Scott wrote a letter about this concern. How would someone who believes that the Department of Education should be eliminated and wrote other really, really bizarre things in this chapter have the privilege to sit on a Board of Visitors of one of the Commonwealth's public institution and the largest public institution in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that she should be removed? And Governor Youngkin wrote him back and told him he had no intent to remove this woman from the Board of Visitors. And the Board of Visitors, as we know, is a policy-making board for the institution that it governs.
Well, you know what? And I'll comment on that is because Glenn, I'll call him Glenn, because I even hate to say he's our governor. It tries to do things in the darkness of night. And now he has been caught. And he knows that Scott cannot do anything because it is a governor's right to appoint. But we don't have to have it like going through the Senate for confirmation. Once he says you're on there, she could go on to that. He could put anybody on these boards that he wants. Any of the Klan members that he knows that he frequents with, he can put them in. And for those who that says that, okay, so she's on the board, but look at what happens in policies that she will do to change that university. And that's only the first step, because if you look at like in the first time that Trump was in office and Betsy DeVos was our Secretary of Education, what did she do to public education and the gutting of and gutting of education while she was in there? I know our students talk about some of them that graduated and all that, and talk about, well, Joe Biden didn't do anything for my school loans. But if you really look at it, you haven't looked at the news or did any research to say who has been fighting to get you those school loans forgiven, and who has been against it from day one. And if you look at Project 2025, they're saying they want to eliminate any notion of loan forgiveness for anybody.
Absolutely.
Anybody.
Anybody.
And they've gone to the courts, and President Biden has stepped up and has gone and around them each time to try to, and he's given out billions of dollars of student loan repayment against these Republicans and the MAGA people. If you were active duty or you were went on Social Security disability, you know what? You got your student loans repaid. They just disappeared. People don't know that. He went behind them and did that.
It's true.
He's done that for cases and cases, for, if you were, say you're a teacher and working in a underserved population.
Right.
And after 10 years on your school loan, the government in the body of your loan, when you signed it 10 years ago, the government was going to pay this back for you. Going to forgive it. But when Betsy was there, only 3% of those 3% of those loans were paid off. They always found some excuse. You didn't dot one of your I's in your name. So, Dr. Fairfax, you forgot to dot the I. So we have to send it back to you. But we're going to wait 6 months before we let you know that you forgot. The ink didn't dot. And so only 3% of those loans got processed.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on and on. And so in the gutting of our public education system, K through 12, they want to put that in a block grant back to the states. So we go back. So if you have a governor like Glenn, it goes back, but separate, but unequal. Right. And those charter schools out there get what is financed by, supposed to be financed by private money. They're getting a piece of your taxpayer dollar. Yeah. It shouldn't be.
Should not be.
Should not be.
Should not be. This is the intent. So you've laid out the reality of what would happen, even if just a smidget, of the articulation in the chapter on education might occur. The gutting of all federal school loans and transmitting them or turning them to private industry. Well, we all know, even if you do that, many people are not going to be granted loans, and they will come with exorbitant interest rates. So we just need to understand what this means then for the yet unborn. The other really, really bizarre aspect about Project 2025 is the preoccupation with removing language, which really, in terms of woke, you don't find woke in any policy articulation. And of course, woke for us, which is our term, has a different connotation having to do with our struggle and our vigilance to stay active in the struggle, to keep yourself in a mindset of struggle. But they've just interpreted that to mean, anti-establishment. Well, perhaps it is, but it's not anti-patriotic, because to protest is patriotic. To stand up for your rights is patriotic, right? So, but they decided, well, anything that includes the word woke should be stricken. And then they included such language such as anything related to gender, gender equality, gender equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights. Any of those terms are to be stricken from all policy articulation, agency articulation, contract, grants, regulations, any. So this is an intellectual and ideological framework where institutions of American society should not then embody any articulation, recognition of race, racial differences, or recognition of female empowerment, the ability for a woman to work with her health professionals if an abortion is required, if an abortion is necessary, and or it is to minimize then those persons who may be of the LGBTQ community. And so in Project 2025, they have written that, and this is just on page 5, that critical race theory and gender ideology is to be excised from curricula in every public school. Well, one of the things that I ask my students at NSU, and they're young enough to tell me they've been out of high school, 2 or 3 years, and that is, well, did y'all learn about critical race theory in school?
Mm-hmm.
No, they did not.
Yeah.
Did you learn about gender ideology in school? No. You have the state controls, unfortunately, the curricula. So as I told my students, it's a nothing burger. All of it is a nothing burger, and it is meant to as a rouse, as a reason, as an excuse, right, for them to do what they wish to do. I talk to my students about the military. Now, people who serve the military, and my grandfather and all his brothers, cousins, the first cousins served. I had great uncles to serve in World War I. I had uncles to serve. My father's brothers served in Vietnam. My father-in-law, retired Air Force. I understand the military in a very personal and private way. This document really wishes to politicize the military. It wishes to use public school as what I call a feeding ground for a draft in their public schools that receive funding, and these would be Title I, low-income schools, that every student should take the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, which is, the military entrance exam. This is your coercion. This is coercion. And it means, let's go to the poor people and have them be the fighting class while we're terminating all rights for their community. And then there's this other foolishness on page 122, and that is to to eliminate the rainbow flag and the Black Lives Matter flag from being hoisted on any embassies where the American flag is hosted. It is written to privatize TSA. It is written that and listen, Ken Cuccinelli, who was the former Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Virginia, wrote the chapter on the Department of Homeland Security. Mm-hmm. In his chapter, he writes that either the Department of Homeland Security be closed or replaced with a standalone border and immigration agency at the cabinet level, which means this would be the conduit for the 11 or 12 million mass deportations that the president has discussed. And then how does this document really go after Black folk? Well, it is written, Chapter 5, to eliminate up to 1 million federal jobs, declare public unions illegal, take away union rights, gut federal workers' pay and benefits, and privatize several several government agencies. I don't understand why people haven't awakened from the slumber that they are in, because this will unleash a whole level of terror. In this document, page 246, and I read most of this document. I can't tell you how swelled my heart was in reading and studying this document. In this document, it is written to strip funding from the Corporation of Public Broadcasting. Now, this is public education, National Public Radio, public broadcasting services, to strip funding, and that the president, because remember, all of the power is in this document is to be within the arm's length of the president, and it is to instruct the Federal Communications Commission to exclude stations affiliated with PBS, affiliated with NPR. It's to exclude them. I don't understand why people are not running to ensure that they can vote. Or the chapter on agriculture, absurd. Limit spending directly to farmers and ranchers when there's been an unforeseen event. So an unforeseen event, it could be what we would call an act of God: hurricane, tornado, flooding. So the very people who provide produce, provide meat, provide other ingredients for other things, why would you limit spending? It is to suppress business growth, and it is also to suppress the availability of food. Same chapter, the chapter on agriculture. It is to eliminate, it's written to eliminate or implement work requirements for SNAP, which is the Food Nutritional Program, WIC, Women's, Infant, and Children. This is to punish poor people, to diminish the quality of life of poor people, and to minimize the availability of assistance. And assistance is already really small. It's not like it makes a dent in your world. It doesn't move people from one socioeconomic class to another. It is only assistance, but you want to take that away. And listen, it's also written, same chapter, that the USDA, this is the Department of Agriculture, should not provide meals to students during the summer unless they're in summer school. These are impoverished students. So it's mean. It's mean-spirited politics. It is. And it is meant, you all, to undermine a certain quality of life that is supposed to be a part of America. Same chapter, they wish to repeal the federal labeling mandate on genetically engineered food. So they wish to repeal dietary guidelines. So we're talking about the labels on products that we buy. And, many of us have to watch certain things, calories, sugar. It's just absurd. It's just absurd. And going back to the Department of Education, listen, it is written. This is the chapter written by a woman who now sits on the Board of Visitors, George Mason. It is written in this chapter that the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers are special interest groups. When do teachers make a lot of money? Again, a nothing burger. They wish to, she has written in this chapter, minimize application of the Civil Rights Act in education, eliminate terms such as sexual orientation, gender identity, prohibit compelled speech of teachers, meaning teachers better not speak out on anything. Better not do it. Eliminate loan forgiveness, which you spoke about. Reject gender ideology and critical race theory. Rescind non-binary category. So people who choose pronouns, who want to associate with pronouns, they will not be able to have that right. That the your sexual identity is that which is assigned to you at birth. They want to. She has written in this chapter. Now, this is a woman again, sits on the board of visitors of a public institution. But guess what? She has written in this chapter that funding to HBCUs and tribal colleges should be block grant and narrowed. With that alone ought to make us, as Mom and Gabe would say, make us want to holler and throw up both our hands. You know, she's wrote in this chapter, the Office of Civil Rights should be removed to the Department of Justice. Well, in the Department of Justice chapter, that author wrote, listen, that Department of Justice should be moved under the president and not function as a standalone department. Very bad news, you all. Very, very bad news.
You know, before you go,
Colonel, can I ask
go
a
ahead.
question right quick, Colonel? Dr. Fairfax, you mentioned how long it took to put this together, and it's probably going to be around for a long time. But I think it's important for people to know with these presentations like you are giving, especially those undecideds out there or the ones say I'm not going to vote, how important it is for us not to let them get back in office where they can implement this, because if they don't get in office, they can't implement it because the president has to sign off on all this stuff. So it's important, at least for the next 4 years,
That's right.
we put a stop to this. So,
That's right.
and I want to ask you also, how are the students receiving this? Because it's going to affect their futures. Are they really receptive to this, or are they paying attention? Is their interest sparked as far as what's in this document?
Yeah, so I have received excellent feedback and reactions about the presentation on Project 2025. And in fact, day before yesterday, the Spartan Echo at NSU, the student newspaper, interviewed me about the presentation. It was wonderful
Okay.
speaking with the young lady named Destiny, who is a fabulous reporter, a fabulous student at NSU. And so this is really good. And I think we just need to really continue to build momentum about this topic. Mm-hmm.
You know what? One thing, Slim, you talked about voting just not for the president, but you have to vote and you have to put these Republicans up and down the ballot, because it's, you know, you look at, for instance, you know, we have a lot of governor races across this country that can put a stop to some of the lunacy that is going out there. You got the House representatives, you got school boards, you got mayors. I mean, all the way up and down the ballot, we have to step out and stamp it out. And as they say, let's destroy it while they're still in the bed before they get out of the crib, because we cannot let it fester. And we were talking about education, the destruction of or the downsizing of our the destruction of our education system really started, in my opinion, back in the George Bush era, when they passed the Leave All the Children's Left Behind Act, where they started teaching the SOLs and teaching for tests. And so we left out to where we can talk about critical thinking. And so that started the whole ball game back then. And now it is morphed into, now we just want to, and I think it was one of the presidential, I think it was like Ben Carson during the time. No, or was it, I think it was Ben Carson during the debate, says he wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. It was one of the.
Well, Ben Carson,
yes,
wrote a chapter in Project 2025. He wrote the chapter on housing.
Yes.
So Ben Carson has decided to cast his lot.
Yes.
With these people, you know, education. And this is a whole nother topic. But you know, public education has been a problem for the status quo since the 1954 Brown versus the Board of Education passage, which desegregated schools to a degree. And it really, I think, began to undermine community control and the community wishes for how we preferred our students to be educated. And so ever since really Brown and after the passage of Brown, we see a growth really of the private school industry, because you have people who refuse to have their children attend schools with Black children. But here's the thing: No Child Left Behind. If you use an African-centered analysis with No Child Left Behind, it was really meant to intellectually cripple our children. It was meant to arrest teachers' creativity in school, arrest the way in which they teach and what they might teach. It was meant to regiment learning to the point where you are creating robots. You are suppressing genuine intellectual and artistic growth and capabilities. You are then deciding that the only information you need to know, the only information that is relevant, is information that really is centered in, white culture, white history, white philosophical concepts, white ideas about the world. And unless that child had other educational influences in their lives, parents who lean in and are engaged, churches who still teach Black history and Black culture in Sunday school and in other activities, and or community outlets, then what happens is what I have been seeing for the past few years, and that is students, beautiful students, come to college not even really understanding themselves, not understanding themselves culturally, not understanding themselves in relationship not only to one another but to the world, and the realities then of what it means to be Black. What are those models from the past, and how am I going to apply them today to solve real issues in the community? So No Child Left Behind was although it was couched as we're providing, the policies providing possibilities and opportunities for students to choose schools and choose this and choose that. It also, though, you all came with a price, and it has shaped. It has. Now you talk about a policy that has really reshaped public school. No Child Left Behind. Every child has been left behind.
Yes.
Yeah. Colonel used to talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's why I always call it by its real name, is Leave All the Children Behind Act.
Leave all the children behind. Yeah.
Leave all the children behind. And so what happens is it becomes then challenging, honestly, by the time the student gets into the sophomore, junior year, where then they are expected, right, to show competency with certain writing skills, certain conceptualization, certain critical thinking skills, certain integrative applications. It becomes challenging because that's a whole foreign way for them to think and to conceptualize. And now what we're battling is AI. So AI now is a tool, and Chat GPT. So students, unfortunately, not all, but many, are using Chat GPT and AI to generate papers. And I learned this. All you have to do is write in, what you need, and a whole springboard will come up, and you cut and paste. It is troubling.
Yes.
Well, my daughter is a college professor, and she talks about that all the time, and how, some of the students totally use it, and then one student, I think she gave a bad grade for it because you can pick it up. They have a system that picks it up right away. That it's AI, and they tried to stare her down and tell her that they actually wrote that. But that's amazing.
Yeah, you can. There are AI detectors online, so you can cut and paste and put that information in the detector, and then it'll provide you with a percentage, and which I unfortunately had to do. And when you get 99% AI generated, you're like, oh my gracious.
Yeah. That's what she said. 99%. There's no leeway there for her to.
But you know what?
Compromise on that.
No.
You have to ask yourself, and America has to ask itself, why are we having an assault on education? Why? And so if you look at it and look at the and the effects of the undertone, Mr. Glenn had a executive order that he said that instead of government jobs, state government jobs, you didn't require a baccalaureate anymore. So Bubba, who's got a friend in HR, can get his son in, who barely sneaked through with a high school diploma, and put him in such and such job, high paying job in the state. And by the time Glenn gets out, and it's hard once you're in the state to actually get rid of you. So you'll be grandfathered in by the laws, and that agency will be forever. Where their Bubba's son or grandson is in, will be able to be crippled forever, but they'll be on the payroll.
Yeah.
But if you go back and look at it in its totality, it's saying we don't want a lot of college graduates anymore.
Right. Well, what?
Oh, wait, one more point.
I'm sorry. You speaking my language. Go ahead.
I don't want the college graduate, because look at the polls now. It's saying who's voting MAGA and who's voting for Trump.
Yeah.
And there's a big disparity of non-college educated white males vote where? Republican Party. And they have set this up from way back when to keep this higher education peripheral. And we know all the good stuff that happens if you have that college degree. You have a better chance of an economic future, and so on and so forth, and to make it work. And if you don't have that education or baccalaureate, and if you don't have a trade school to put you in the middle class, if I'm just in that poor situation, I can fool you with anything. I can tell you the others have taken your job. That the others are taking, especially when we talk about us, the others are taking those black jobs. What are black jobs? I haven't discussed that, haven't figured that out, if there's a black job out there for us. But the others are taking it. So you believe that stuff. If you don't have the critical thinking skills to figure out that you've been built, you've been, as Malcolm X says,
been hoodwinked,
bamboozled, hoodwinked.
Yeah. Some going way back. Yes, go ahead.
No, but let's just, and this is really a part of why we need to pay attention to such propaganda documents like and plans like Project 2025, because the fact that Donald Trump keeps saying black jobs, yes, because the whole intent of creating this, because remember, the public school system now, or has been now since in this new century, has more black students than ever before. What do you do with these students? You don't want them to be educated to go against the status quo. You don't want them to be educated to question certain things. You don't want them to be educated for them to stay in love with their own people, their own culture, their own history, their own traditions, their own ways of healing, their own ways of worship. And so it benefits the status quo. And so the fact that Trump keeps saying, black jobs, he keeps using that term, it is absolutely meant to maintain a worker, underclass, minimally skilled group of people that benefits those in power. Now, what he does is, he's also xenophobic, right? So he doesn't want immigrants here. But I think, too, we should be mindful that immigrants, and I'm not opposed to immigration, but what I think we, though, should be mindful in terms of our own communities is that immigrants often come here, they are indifferent to our history here. They're indifferent to the unique ways that we are forced to interface with systems. and they are insensitive and indifferent. And so, that's a whole nother conversation. But I
Yeah.
think these are, socioeconomic issues from our perspective that we need to unpack more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dr. Fairfax, we certainly want to have that conversation at some time. And I'd like to get you and the Colonel's take on the debate. But before we go there, what would you tell people? It's a 920-page document. And how would you tell some people to approach it? I think with students, if you really want to get something out of it, with students, they can come to groups and assign certain pages and then get together and discuss it. I guess uh, adults could do that too. But what would be your way telling someone how to approach it? Because they might be scared away with that 900-page,
Yeah,
facing them. I'm not even tackling that, but
right, right.
it's ways you can go in there and find some things that might be
Oh, absolutely.
beneficial to you.
Yes, that's an excellent question, sir. And Mr. Overton, and I would approach it with choose a chapter you're interested in and
Mhm.
study that chapter, because each of the chapters are so absurd. Each
Mhm.
each of them are so absurd. You're going to find absurd articulations in the chapter. Just some other examples, because I know our time is getting close, but uh, it's written in the housing and urban development chapter to overhaul it, to place statutory restrictions on first time home buyers. So it means really to restrict the eligibility of first time home buyers, to abandon the affirmative action obligation that authorities have with regards to single family housing programs across federal agencies and government sponsored enterprises. This is the chapter written
Mm-hmm.
by Ben Carson. By Ben Carson. And in the chapter written about the Department of Justice, listen, in this chapter, one of the things that jumped out at me is that if local and state attorneys use their own discretion, which they often do, to either pursue or not pursue prosecutions in certain cases, well, it's written that the Justice Department may eventually, or may have the authority to intervene, to force those attorneys to prosecute. Now, depending upon the jurisdiction, depending upon the district, those decisions are made. But the Justice Department should not have that kind of intervention unless there's been malfeasance, or a prosecutorial process hasn't been followed through. But this is saying no. If you don't do something we think you should do, just because we think it, not because there's been a process broken, a procedure broken, no, we can step in and
Mm-hmm.
we can take care of. This is very, very dangerous. Every chapter is dangerous. The chapter on energy, these people do not believe in climate change. They don't believe that there should be any assistance if something happens to districts. And we saw what happened in '05 with our brothers and sisters in New Orleans and the Gulf of Mississippi. And so they are legislating, you all, our very demise. They are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that what you did too is focus on the authors of those different sections and their backgrounds. And I think if you know who is writing this, that might help you too,
Yeah, you're
as
right.
far as yeah, who is writing these things. So
Absolutely.
anyway, get to the debate before we run out of time, and I'll just let you and the Colonel talk about how'd you feel about it.
Colonel?
Well, I can summarize it, and I'll use the example of a sports analogy or a sports event that happened decades ago with Roberta Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard and that fight, when basically Sugar Ray just whipped him to death and with that jab and then bloodied him up. And what Roberto says, no mas, no more, no more. That exactly what Trump is saying today. No mas. He says, I won't debate her anymore because he says he won. But that means is that no more, and just say no mas, no mas. She beat
He also said he won the election.
yeah, yeah. She
Yeah.
beat the H out of him. I
And
mean,
still saying
yeah. And then so if I was her, I wouldn't debate. You know, even though she says she wants to debate him again, and he's running scared, and he'd have to come out on his knees to debate me again, because
Right.
you don't give him a second chance to try to morph into somebody he's not going to be.
Yeah, I was conflicted with her even debating this man. The man has, is a convicted felon.
Yeah.
He's, and he's just so profane. He's
Yes.
so profane in every way. But we all know the political stratosphere. If she didn't debate him,
Right.
then
Yeah.
it would turn into well, she either was afraid or she wasn't capable.
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think that Madam Vice President performed admirably.
Mhm.
She did what she came there to do, and not only to expose him for the person that he is, but also she talked about her economic opportunity
Mhm.
policy platform, and I think that all of what she did was important. I think that she reacted appropriately to the most insane and irrational things that he said. I wish I would like to have heard from her, and I hope to hear from her more policy articulation that's going to uniquely benefit the Black community. I was disappointed that the subject of police brutality did not come up, and in fact, there was really no segment on race and politics at all.
just a little small
Yeah,
snippet,
yeah.
but no
I
substance.
yeah, exactly. So I was irritated that didn't come up. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which has yet to see the light of day, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is an important policy articulation, and and just as an aside, Liz Cheney, comes out Republican to support Kamala Harris. Well, Liz Cheney voted against those policies I just mentioned, so I don't really care about an endorsement from Liz Cheney. And I think we need to, not get so happy with certain endorsements and stick to the history that
Mhm.
we know. I would like to have heard from her a policy mandate that supports Black men exiting prison who struggle to find their economic footing, who struggle, right, to be connected with their families as contributors, as supporters, as protectors. I would like to have heard more of a policy articulation about providing more funding for persons in recovery, for persons who are dual diagnosis, for persons who have mental health issues. These mental health community centers are so low budget, are underfunded. You only have a skeleton staff, and they're supposed to serve thousands and thousands of people. And
Mhm.
because we live in this anti-Black, profane, white supremacist civilization, yes, we should expect some of our people to lose their minds, and we need extra funding so that they can get the kind of intervention and the help that they need. I would like to have heard more articulation about how we're going to teach a better history, the real honest truth history in our country. I would like to have heard articulation about, how to provide funding for more of the economies in our
Mhm.
community, the
Yeah,
cultural economies, museums and community theaters and, economic co-ops, how we can, fund, some of the archives in our community. And these are all job creation and
yeah.
institution, building. So I think no doubt she is the preferred candidate in terms of pushing our Black freedom struggle forward. But we're gonna have to stay in her face with
Yeah.
our expectations.
Yeah.
I think that's going to have to come with the interviews, because they had to, if they had to prepare for a normal person, it
Yes,
would have been different. But they had to
I know.
prepare for him to
Yes,
take his manhood away from him, or he would have just been crazy. And
I get.
hopefully, all those things you mentioned that they will they will have a strategy of where they go with their interviews, who they talk to, and make sure the message gets to the right people. But that and not interview, not debate him again. That's not going to happen because
Right,
you have to approach someone like him differently,
right.
and all those subjects can't come up because you have to be on top of him. I think.
Oh,
But
I agree, Mr. Overton. But
yeah,
as we move forward, these and other issues that
they have to come up. They have to
should
come up. I agree with you.
we have got to keep those issues in the forefront. We can I don't believe we should assume anything, and I think the
Nothing.
community
Nothing.
made that mistake a bit during the second term of Barack Obama. We
Hmm.
do not need to to make the same mistake.
Yeah, but I will say is that she still has to get elected,
Yeah,
and
that's
we
right.
put too much out there. It turns off that white America that will say, "Oh, she's only going to
If
look
it's too
out for
black, you're
black folks."
saying.
Yes, and then so some of that we'll have to take it with a grain of salt. That she won't be a Barack Obama who is sort of scared of his own shadow
Yeah,
when it came to black issues, and I don't think she's going to be that. But she
yeah.
still has to get elected in this 50-50 world that we're in, and so
But she, but,
she can
but
put a
she has
little
to
bit
get that
out there.
message out to our community, though.
Yes,
Somehow,
and
however way
she
it
can
takes,
put it out to her surrogates, and then so she can have plausible deniability unless she's called on it. We have to do whispering campaign. Here's a paper. I have representative from one of the advisors. Her representatives can come out and spokesmen come out and talk about that and on different platforms. But she has to run that risk of that segment because it's going to be a thin, election period, for
I,
the
I,
vote.
no, I think you're right, Colonel. I list all those things for the benefit of the listeners, for
Mhm.
them to have policy understanding and ideas of impactful and meaningful policy. So
Yeah.
you're right. We the goal is to put the best opponent
Mhm.
in the White House, and she is it. And when she gets in the White House, we should never assume.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right.
The other piece is whatever policy she puts out there, you have to also ask is where is his? Just like his healthcare plan of 7 years ago, where it was always we're going to announce it in 2 weeks. And now when he has it on national TV, he has an outline or a concept of a plan.
Yeah,
So he has nothing. But everything she has, you just say, what is his?
and in fact,
yeah.
His final words, his final summation was an attack. He offered nothing that he would do, and the fact that he said, "Oh, I have a concept," it's like a seasoned politician would never have said that. That was so sophomoric of him. The dude is unserious.
Yeah,
but it's close.
Mhm. Yes.
Explain that.
Yeah. And that's why I go back on, depending on, you have to be careful what you tell America now. And
Yeah.
we're just going to have we have trust and verify because it's just so close. And then I hear, as they say in the barbershop, oh, I need to hear these policies. But if I told you some policies, you wouldn't believe, you really don't understand them. But what is the other guy's policy?
Well, precisely. Why are we playing this game?
Yeah.
Why are we playing this game? And so, she is the best candidate for the community. She is the best candidate. This is a woman who has a background that we can identify with. This is a woman who's been connected to Black institutions and organizations. She has never disavowed who she is. No, and I'm glad she's not caving to having to discuss her Blackness. It's just absurd.
Yeah.
It's absurd. America has never had an issue with identifying Black people. Who are Black people? Everybody who wasn't white. If you had a drop of Black in you, whether the black was from the South, whether the black was from the Caribbean, whether the black was from the motherland, you were black. So now all of a sudden, folks and the white establishment believes she needs to defend and it is demeaning. It is demeaning, and people are forgetting. I'm speaking now about people in our own community are forgetting blackness. Blackness. It's just absurd.
Yes,
really.
And I have to give her props because she is not falling for the Barack Obama mistake or trying to have to defend himself, or the Hillary Clinton saying I'm the first woman.
Right.
She hasn't brought that up. Her claim is I'm just the best qualified.
Yeah.
Bam. Done.
Yeah. You said we're forgetting blackness, but they're not.
Yes.
Exactly. In other words, they know she's not white.
She's not white.
Right. So that's why they exactly
not even discuss it. Like you said, why you know what she is.
Exactly. But that's precisely why the establishment believes that they can go after her race because she's not black. So they want to treat her like a mutt. It is really insulting. But also it shows you then how America and American institutions will take race and use it in a way that benefits the status quo. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, we come to the end. I want to thank you, Dr. Fairfax, again for coming on. You've been on here many times, and we're going to be calling you again. We have to get on that immigration thing. We have to talk about that. But I'm still looking for an opportunity to have students up here, to have a conversation with some students as they get more into their semester. Maybe we can work something out like that.
Absolutely.
Okay? All right.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you again. And remember, we're here for our voice, our community, and our future. See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.